How's it going, you guys? Welcome to EngineuityTV, where I try to teach you anything and everything automotive and mechanical related. In the last video, I had mentioned something called a carburetor. I just never really touched base as to what it was, how it worked, or what it did. And that's kind of what this video is meant to do. So the overall idea of a carburetor is to give you an air-fuel mixture, and it is a little bit complicated to explain, so I'm hoping that my explanation skills are going to be good for this one. Cool. Well, let's get started off with, I guess, labeling a few parts without actually writing the labels down, because that gets kind of messy, and it's just not how it is that I like to work. Alright, so let's not have the big can't draw sign. Our main part is going to be this thing right here that makes the inside of your carburetor look kind of like an hourglass. What that's meant to do is that's meant to limit the airflow from the top. Alright, so airflow would come in through here, and it would fill up this chamber. I'd call it a chamber, it's not really a chamber, it's just an area. Fill up this area right up here with air, and obviously it would have to flow through this venturi and come through here. But this venturi is meant to limit that airflow, which gives the lower area a lower pressure than the top area. And that's very, very important, and I'm going to ask you guys to remember that for the entire video, because I said air pressure is the most important thing in a carburetor. Next, we have these things right here called... Actually, before we even get into these things, they're called capillaries, but we'll get into them in a second. We have this box right over here with this green kind of thing that I've drawn in here, and this box is called a reservoir box. And what it is it's essentially it's a big tank, or not really big, but it's a tank that gets filled up with fuel. And this thing right here, just imagine this tube right here leads off to your fuel tank, and that's how it actually feeds in. So what happens is inside of the reservoir box, you have fuel, the green stuff, and then this thing right here called I'm just going to call it a float. And what happens with this float, the best way for me to explain it to you would be to flush your toilet, look inside of the toilet top, and watch what happens when the water level rises to a certain point, when the toilet stops making the noise. Essentially what happens is the fuel level rises, it hits this thing, and it pushes up to a certain level, which then closes off this tube, which doesn't let any more fuel in, which is actually pretty important. Cool. From there, we have these things right here called capillaries. So they're like little tubes. This one right here deals specifically with fuel. And this one right here deals specifically with air. And I'm going to cover the one that deals with air first. So what happens with this one right here is it leads outside of the choke. And what happens is it's actually getting, it's actually going to allow the pressure in here to be equal to the atmospheric pressure outside. That's its entire purpose. That's it. It's just to equal out the pressure from the outside to the pressure on the inside of this reservoir box. This one right here is kind of the interesting capillary. This one right here is your the one that deals with the fuel. That's what injects the fuel into the carburetor itself. Now, we were talking about how air flows from the outside to the inside, and theoretically your atmospheric pressure right here should be pretty similar to the pressure inside this top part. Even if it's not, that doesn't matter. All that matters really is the air pressure between here to the air pressure in here. Now, what happens is, I said airflow comes through here. If you remember, airflow comes through here. This gets limited, and it makes the pressure lower in the bottom. What that lower pressure does is it almost acts like a vacuum. If you guys have ever taken any physics classes before, or any kind of, actually most science classes will teach it, any place that has a lower pressure, the area with the higher pressure will try to move its own pressure to it to try to equal it all out. It's kind of a whole equilibrium idea. It wants everything to be equal in pressure. It's physics overall. So in doing that, what's happening is it's pushing fuel, or pulling fuel, I guess in this case, pulling fuel out here. And what happens is that this fuel mixes in with the air here in the bottom area of the carburetor, and that's what gives you your fuel-air mixture. And as I said, this is a full throttle right here. This rectangle right here is called a throttle. This rectangle up here is called a choke. We're going to get into what exactly those things do. But this bottom one right here, I'm sure you guys have heard of the word throttle before. It just opens up and allows for the air-fuel mixture to move into the engine. These dashed lines right here are what these things would look like closed. but they're both open at the time being, and that's how your engine runs at full throttle, or it's how the carburetor looks at full throttle. Now let's assume that you're at idle. Now what's going to happen there is that your throttle, your choke isn't necessarily closed. Your choke is for the most part going to be always open, but your throttle can be closed. And by closed, I'm kind of putting a set of quotation marks around that, because it's never completely closed. You have this little weird rectangle looking thing right here, and no, that's not an accident. I put that in there on purpose. It's called an idle speed adjustment, and what that does is it limits how closed your throttle can actually be, and what it's doing is it's letting the little amount of air pressure that is in here flow through, so you are never actually completely starving your engine of either fuel or your air. Extremely important. If this didn't happen, as soon as you let go of the accelerator pedal, your engine would just quit. It wouldn't run. So extremely important. That's that part. Your choke is used for cold starts. So really all that happens is the choke is there to prevent air from coming in for a short period of time, so you can make the air to fuel mixture more rich. And by more rich, I'm going to try to explain that to you guys. Essentially what it means is having more fuel to air. We're going to just draw end box. No, I drew a dot. That is not what I want it to do, ladies and gentlemen. Draw end box. I'm very bad at drawing boxes. Someone please teach me art. Okay, cool. We have one box, and then we have two boxes. Now let's say that we took actually forget about it. Let's draw three boxes, because we have another thing that I just thought of. So we have three boxes, and we're going to label it, and I don't want it to be green. I want it to be black. And yes, I do use Photoshop for this, if none of you guys have been able to figure that out yet. Let's call this one right here, this middle one, we'll call it a normal. So NORM, a normal air fuel mixture. This would be your average air fuel mixture that your car is running. And then we have rich, and then we have lean. Now imagine that these boxes are filled with air. Alright? The important part here is, for a lean mixture, there's very few particles of fuel inside of there. A normal one is going to have a few more particles in the area, or it's going to be a little more dense in fuel particles. And then rich is just going to have particles galore here. Like we're particle central over here, all right? And that's the difference between them. So when you're starting up your car, you want it to be more rich, so that your engine can warm up quicker. Hopefully that made sense, and I didn't make myself sound like an idiot trying to explain that. I'm sure most of you already knew it, but for those of you that didn't, that's kind of the idea behind it. That's the differences. That's essentially how a carburetor works. That's the most basic form of it. If you guys felt like I didn't do the greatest job on this one, feel free to let me know down in the comments. But other than that, I hope it helped you guys. And if you guys liked what you saw, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys have any more topics for any future videos that you'd like me to cover, if you guys have any questions on the current video that I posted, comment down in the bottom. I try to check every single comment possible. If I miss it, then I apologize. I will shoot me off a message and say, hey, you missed my comment, and I'll definitely get to it. All right. Thanks, you guys. Have a great day.